Please forgive me. I thought tonight to try something that I don't normally do. It's not the kind of a talk that I would give. But Father Raphael told me that I would speak to young people. And so I chose the theme, a theme which might be useful for the young people. Man's personal relationships with other people in the light of his relationship with God. God is a relational being, and we also created in his image and likeness. We are relational beings. And of course it is important because eternal life is nothing else but the continuing relationship we build up with Christ in this life. The only difference, it will be stronger and clearer and more perfect. Otherwise, there is nothing mystical about it. It's the same relationship we build now with Christ, continued, more perfectly. So, man's personal relationships with other people in the light of his relationship with God. It's just 5 pages so that we can have more time for discussion afterwards. I hope I can read it correctly because my English is not very good. Love is the only thing worth living for and which gives a meaning to man's life. Of course, the usual kind of human love is entirely different to divine love and does not bear its characteristics. It is but a weak shadow of it. When love is expressed on the level of the flesh, it is not even love, but only the stirring of passion for another person. It deadens the soul and makes man unable to have a relationship with God, and consequently with other people, because it is prompted by the passion of the love of pleasure and pride. Again, when it is expressed on as an ideal on the intellectual and psychological level, since it is still based on a weak and passionate person, it results in even greater disappointment, making his spirit desolate and grievously wounding his soul, so that it is even more difficult to cure him. Around us we see only tragedies and broken relationships. Nevertheless, we think that we will manage better. Unfortunately, we are ignorant of the measure of our fall and of how weak we are. We expect perfect and dynamic love from those around us who have the same passions as us, whilst we ourselves are unable to offer this because we are all bound by strong bonds of heavy burdens of sins. Our mistake is that we expect those around us, that is, sick and fallen creatures, to fulfill our innate need for love, which is something that only God can truly satisfy. We are deceived when we expect to receive from men something that God alone can give us. He instilled in us the desire for love, and He alone can satisfy it. We will know Him through love and become like Him through love. When the winds of the temptations of the world begin to blow, then even the most perfect relationships, which seem to be incredibly good and strong, fall apart, and all that one is left with are the broken pieces which pitifully cry out, "How could this happen?" Faded human love preserves something of the sacrificial element found in divine love. It gives itself to the end and lives in the beloved, around whom all its happiness and life revolves. Is it understandable, my reading? Sorry. When, however, man betrays it, then love ends up empty and lost. Nothing remains of those good and strong feelings that were there. The wound is unbearable, and the whole person is shaken and shattered. Life loses its meaning. Then, in despair with life, how many times do people not end up committing suicide in order to be freed from their pain? When we are confronted by the ruins of human love and find ourselves completely broken, then two solutions can be given. Either we turn to God with our pain, so that God enters our life and renews us, or we continue to be deceived by our human plans and skip from one tragedy and barrenness of soul to another, hoping that sometime we'll find perfection. The drama continues until we come to realize that we cannot achieve this on our own. We need a third person in our relationships. Just as the priests who embrace one another in the heart of the divine liturgy say, "Christ is in our midst," so we should do the same in our life. God is not an intruder in our personal relationships, but the one who will cleanse and perfect them. He will make them secure because His great and eternal love will strengthen and inspire them. This is exactly why we run to church, where the grace of God in the sacrament of marriage will sanctify the union of the man and woman, so that they will complement each other with their talents and work together for a perfection which will be reflected not only in their loving relationship in this life, but in the eternity of the kingdom to come. The Lord said, "Without me you can do nothing." If we perceive the falseness of searching for a perfect and ideal relationship with someone, and are convinced of this, then we will understand that we can only fulfill our deep and innate desire for a loving relationship with God, our Maker, our Provider, and our Redeemer. Then we'll begin an infinitely creative and life-giving journey with God. The stronger our bond of love with God will become, the purer and stronger will be our love in any horizontal direction. This love will be healthy and powerful in the perspective of our only true love, which is God Himself, and will only then have value because it will be free, in other words, sinless. When the passion of the flesh is active, it obscures the intellect and makes man unsuitable for spiritual progress and the acquisition of divine love. Any kind of love, independent of God, is ontologically self-destructive. When our direct relationship with God is true and strong, then all our other relationships on the horizontal level will be pure and strong. We must enter the contest of our own free will and offer a sacrifice if we wish our relationships with God and our fellows to be successful. If we understand that in our present state we are unable to fulfill our boundless desire for love, then maybe we'll be more humble and discreet in the love we expect in our human relationships. If we become aware of man's poverty and wretchedness, but also the greatness of God's merciful love, we will acquire compassion and forgiveness. We will be purified of our selfishness and treat others with respect and freedom. We will accept them as they are, without wishing to make them perfect in inverted commas, according to our way of thinking, and will not make demands on them, neither seek to dominate them. When we make contact with God, then the broken pieces of our former life are restored. Our heart is freed from the burden of the past and dares to love God and His fellows and His fellow once again. We are no longer scared of being vulnerable and do not fence ourselves around with walls for protection, because from now on we do not trust in man, but in Him who can raise the dead. If, however, we do not have true love in our life, inspired by a relationship with God, then we will not be able to escape one of these two classic temptations. If we happen to be psychologically stronger, we shall do anything we can to dominate our fellow and take advantage of him. But if we are weaker psychologically, then we'll become the victim of the passion of ambition in others. A relationship under such conditions is indeed unhappy and graceless. It is in fact slavery. When we come to know God in our relationship with Him, we are initiated into the mystery of the person, of the human hypostasis, made in the image and likeness of God. Then we'll be able to meet every other person with fear, respect, and humble love, with the knowledge that in God's eyes, every human soul is more precious than all the world. Gradually, we'll also learn to love others without being selfish, with trust and without limits. In this way, we maintain our personal freedom so as to continue our relationship at the cross. So as to continue our discipleship at the cross of Christ, which is the most wonderful and beneficial thing in our life. In this relationship, putting Christ first as the other par excellence, we'll find our true identity, because when we are with Him, we can lose and find our life again, confident that we are safe. We find confirmation of all that we mentioned above in God's revelation. In chapter 32 of Genesis, the strange and amazing battle between God and Jacob is described. We see